My hands were shaking when I stepped onto the graduation stage. The lights were bright, everyone was cheering, and my heart was pounding with pride and relief. After 4 years of sacrifice, I was finally going to receive my diploma. But when the principal opened the folder, my smile vanished. The page inside was completely blank. He looked at my father in the front row and said, "Jonathan Miles, it's time to tell her the truth." The entire auditorium fell silent. My dad's face turned pale, and in that moment, I knew my life was about to change in ways I could never have imagined. Please make sure you're subscribed, because what I'm about to tell you is something no one will see coming. Comment below which country you're watching from. My name is Ariana Miles, and ever since I can remember, my life has been ruled by rules. My father's rules. He wasn't just a strict parent. He was the kind of man who believed feelings were weaknesses and failure was unforgivable. While other kids spent their weekends at sleepovers or football games, I spent mine memorizing textbooks at our kitchen table, while my father timed me with a stopwatch. People in my town looked at us and saw the perfect family. My dad was admired by everyone. Neighbors greeted him with respect. Teachers praised him for being involved. And at church, people would whisper about how lucky I was to have a father so devoted to my future. But behind closed doors, things were different. Every A- was treated like an embarrassment. Every moment I wasn't studying felt like a crime. My mother, Elena, was the opposite of my father. She moved quietly around the house like she was always trying not to make a sound. I hardly ever saw her smile. When my dad entered the room, she would lower her eyes and fall silent. I used to think that was just how marriages worked. Now I'm not so sure. Graduation morning started like a dream. The sky was clear, birds were singing, and my cap and gown hung neatly on my bedroom door. I had been named valedictorian. My dad had framed my college acceptance letter and hung it in the living room where every guest could see it. Everything I had worked for was finally about to pay off. But as I came down for breakfast, I noticed something strange. My mom's eyes were red and swollen like she'd been crying all night. She tried to smile at me while pouring coffee, but her hands were shaking. My father sat at the table, calm as always, reading the newspaper. But there was tension in the air, thick and heavy. When my mom placed a plate in front of him, he didn't thank her. He just said, "We are not discussing this today. It's done." She looked at him and whispered, "She deserves to know." My father's tone sharpened. "We will not ruin her day." They froze when they saw me standing there. My mother quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. My father folded his paper and smiled with pride as if nothing had happened. "Big day. Ariana," he said. "Everything we've worked for comes down to today." I didn't know it then, but that sentence wasn't encouragement. It was a warning. As I walked out to the car, I noticed our neighbors watching from their porch, smiling and waving proudly. I waved back, pretending everything was fine, but deep inside, I felt something was wrong, like a heavy shadow following me. At the graduation venue, friends hugged me. Teachers congratulated me. My best friend Zoe ran up and squeezed my hand. "This is it," she said excitedly. "You made it." But when I looked toward the faculty area, I saw our principal, Dr. Lawson, staring at me with this expression I had never seen before. It wasn't pride, it was worry, almost regret. Right then, I felt the first crack in the perfect life my father had built around me. The air inside the auditorium felt warmer than usual, as more guests poured in, filling every seat. My name was printed on the front page of the graduation program, next to the words valedictorian, full academic honors. Students kept coming up to me, telling me how proud they were, how my speech inspired them, and how I was the girl who never gave up. I smiled back, but a strange heaviness was growing in my chest. I kept remembering the way my mother looked at me that morning. Her eyes weren't just sad, they were scared. It didn't make sense. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. When I went backstage to prepare for the ceremony lineup, I noticed teachers whispering as I walked by. Normally, they would congratulate me or offer last-minute encouragement, but now they were watching me silently, like they were waiting for something to happen. One of them, Mr. Harlan, who had always supported me through high school, avoided eye contact and walked away quickly when I greeted him. My stomach tightened. I turned to my friend Zoe, trying to laugh off the weird behavior. "Did someone die and no one told me?" I joked. Zoe didn't laugh. Her eyes were darting around nervously. "Ariana, I'm not imagining this, right? People are acting strange." I nodded slowly but didn't know what to say. Then something happened that made my heart drop. As we began lining up in alphabetical order, I saw Dr. Lawson, our principal, holding a small stack of diplomas. When his eyes met mine, he didn't smile. Instead, his expression softened with a kind of sympathy that made me feel sick. He took a step toward me, paused like he was struggling with a decision, then turned away abruptly when my father entered the room. My father walked up to him with the confidence of a man in full control. He placed a firm hand on the principal's shoulder and said in a low voice, "Remember what we agreed." The principal nodded reluctantly. I stood frozen. What agreement? My father had absolutely no authority over graduation procedures. Why was he giving instructions to the principal? And why did the principal look like he wanted to be anywhere else but here? The more I watched their interaction, the more I realized something was seriously wrong. During rehearsal, I tried to focus, but my mind kept circling back to my mother's pale face, my father's cold confidence, the teacher's strange silence. Everything that once felt safe was suddenly unfamiliar. After rehearsal, I walked outside to get some air, and that's when I saw it. 2 police officers in uniform standing near the entrance. My father was talking to them. His arms were crossed, his expression stern. One officer pointed toward the building where Dr. Lawson had gone. The other nodded, writing something down. I stepped back behind a pillar before they could see me. Why were police talking to my father? And why did he look threatened? Zoe must have seen my face when I came back inside because she grabbed my arm. "Ariana, what did you see? You're white as a sheet." I hesitated, then decided to tell her everything. My mother's tears, the teacher's looks, my father's conversation with the principal, and now with the police. Zoe's eyes widened with fear. This isn't normal. Something is about to happen, and I don't think it's about you. I think it's about your father. Those words hit me harder than she intended. My father had always been strict, controlling, and unpredictable, but he was respected. People admired him. What could possibly be so serious that it involved police officers and the school principal preparing a speech that looked like it would break someone's heart? As we walked toward the auditorium doors to take our seats, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text from an unknown number. "You deserve to know the truth before it's too late. Don't let your father control the narrative." My breath caught. I showed it to Zoe. She looked around anxiously. "Ariana, do you think this is a prank?" I shook my head. Something deep inside me already knew. It wasn't a prank. It was a warning. Suddenly, I heard my name being called. Dr. Lawson was standing near the stage entrance. He motioned for me to come over. My heart pounded as I approached. He lowered his voice. "Ariana, no matter what happens today, remember this is not your fault." I opened my mouth to ask what he meant, but before I could speak, my father appeared behind me. His smile was tight, forced. "Everything is ready," he said sharply to Dr. Lawson, then turned to me. "Stay focused. This is your moment." But his eyes didn't show pride. They showed fear. As I followed the line of students to the stage, my vision blurred with anxiety. Everyone around me was celebrating, cheering, and laughing. Meanwhile, I felt like I was walking straight into a storm I couldn't see, toward a truth that would shatter everything I believed about my family. I didn't know what was about to happen, but I knew one thing. The life I knew was already slipping away. The moment I stepped off the stage after rehearsal, the strange behavior around me could no longer be dismissed as nerves. My heart felt heavy with a fear I couldn't explain. But one thing was clear. I could not wait for the truth to be handed to me in front of hundreds of people. I had to find it myself. The auditorium was slowly emptying as students went off to meet their families before the formal ceremony started. While everyone was outside taking photos in their gowns, I walked in the opposite direction, toward the administration wing. My hands were cold, my breath shaky, but a voice inside me kept saying, "You need to know what's going on before that diploma is placed in your hand." I pushed open the door to the main office, expecting to be stopped, but there was no one at the front desk. Most of the staff were helping set up the ceremony. The silence in the room felt eerie. I moved quickly, praying no one would walk in. As I approached the locked records room, I hesitated. What exactly was I looking for? I didn't have the answer, only a growing certainty that whatever secret was about to come out. It revolved around my academic record. I remembered the strange way Dr. Lawson had looked at me, as if he wanted to stop something from happening, but couldn't. I remembered my mother's voice shaking when she said I deserved to know, and I remembered my father warning her not to ruin the day. There was a small window next to the records door where I could see inside. The folders were stacked neatly, labeled by student ID numbers. My fingers trembled as I typed my student code into the keypad. I wasn't supposed to have access, but my father worked closely with the school board, and the same keypad code he used on his office files was the first one I tried. The lock clicked open. The folder with my name was easy to spot. Bold block letters spelling out Miles, Ariana R. I took a deep breath and opened it. At first, everything looked normal. Transcripts, attendance sheets, standardized test scores. But as I flipped through the pages, my heartbeat began to accelerate. Several documents had signatures that didn't match my teacher's handwriting. There were notes saying approved per parental request and entered by authorization, but no teacher names were attached. My senior year report card was stamped with perfect attendance, even though I had missed nearly 2 months due to what my father called private tutoring at home. Then I saw something that made my vision tunnel, an official notice from the State Education Board dated 6 months earlier, stating that I had been automatically withdrawn from public school due to extended absences. According to their records, I had never re-enrolled. For a moment, I couldn't move. The room spun as my mind raced to make sense of what I was seeing. If I wasn't enrolled, how was I standing here as valedictorian? How were my grades recorded at all? The truth slid into my mind like ice. I hadn't earned any of it. My father had created it. The next page confirmed it. A signed agreement between my father and Dr. Lawson, indicating that, due to medical circumstances, I would complete my coursework privately and that my father would provide all academic validation. But the signature on Dr. Lawson's line was shaky, scribbled, as if he had been pressured. There were notes in the margin that looked like attempts to refuse. The last page was a warning. If the board discovered falsified records, there would be legal consequences for both my father and the school. My breath came in short gasps as I backed away from the file cabinet. It wasn't just about forged grades. It was about control. My father had removed me from school without my knowledge. He had created an illusion of perfection to make himself look like a model parent. He didn't care about my future. He cared about his image. I heard footsteps approaching and quickly closed the folder. But before I could leave, I heard my mother's voice. Ariana. She stepped into the doorway, her eyes filled with guilt. She didn't look surprised to see me there. I tried to tell him this would destroy you. I stared at her, stunned. Mom, you knew? You knew he forged everything? She nodded slowly, tears sliding down her cheeks. He said it was temporary. He said you weren't emotionally stable enough to return to school. He said it was the only way to protect you. I shook my head in disbelief. Protect me from what? From the truth that I wasn't perfect? She took a step toward me, but I backed away. You didn't protect me. You lied to me. At that moment, a calm I had never felt before settled over me. For years, my father controlled every decision in my life, but now I had the information he never wanted me to see. I had a choice. I could stay silent and let the lie continue, or I could stand on that stage and break the image he spent years building. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the ceremony lineup, I closed the folder and straightened my gown. My mother whispered, Ariana, what are you going to do? I looked her in the eye for the first time without fear. I'm going to tell the truth, not just for me, but for every moment of my life I wasn't allowed to live. And with that, I walked out of the office, not as the girl my father controlled, but as the young woman who was finally ready to expose him. The auditorium lights dimmed as the ceremony officially began. The low hum of conversations quieted into silence, and the school band played softly while the graduates filed in. I could hear the cheering of families, the flashes of cameras, and the occasional voice calling out a name. My heart pounded with every step I took down the aisle, the truth burning in my chest. This was no longer just a graduation ceremony. It was the moment everything would come to light. As I took my seat on the stage, I searched the audience, and my eyes landed on my father in the front row. He sat upright, shoulders squared, face composed like a man sitting on a throne. To everyone else, he looked proud, but I saw it. His hands were clasped too tightly, his jaw stiff. He knew the truth was coming too. Dr. Lawson stepped onto the microphone and welcomed the audience. His voice was steady, but his eyes kept flickering toward me and then to my father. As the ceremony progressed, awards were handed out. Students laughed, parents cried, and applause echoed through the auditorium. But underneath all of it, I felt a steady tension building, like a storm gathering behind a calm sky. Finally, it was time for the diplomas to be distributed. The principal began calling names, one by one. Students walked across the stage, shook hands, received their diplomas, and posed for their moment of glory. My turn was approaching, and every breath I took felt sharp in my chest. The announcer's voice echoed through the speakers. Valedictorian and top honors graduate, Ariana Miles. The entire room erupted into applause. I heard people cheering my name, chanting "Go Ariana," and I saw my classmates looking at me with real admiration. For years, I had dreamed of this moment, but now, instead of joy, I felt a heavy sense of finality, like I was walking toward the end of something, not the beginning. I stepped onto the stage, my gown brushing against the polished wood floor. My eyes locked onto the principal. He looked at me with something that was not pride or celebration. It was sorrow. He opened the diploma folder and handed it to me with trembling hands. I looked down. The page inside was completely blank. A shock of cold fear rushed through me. Gasps rose from the audience. Confused murmurs spread across the auditorium like ripples in water. Before I could speak, the principal stepped to the microphone. His voice was unsteady. This diploma is blank because it does not represent academic failure. It represents a truth that has been hidden from this student, one that must be spoken today, in front of witnesses. The crowd fell silent. My heart hammered in my chest. The principal turned to face my father, his voice gaining strength. "Jonathan Miles, it is time to tell your daughter what you have done." The entire room turned toward my father. His expression changed instantly from calm to panic. He stood abruptly. "That's enough," he snapped. "This is a private matter." The principal didn't back down. "You made it public when you falsified school records, forged signatures, and destroyed this student's chance to earn her achievements. Honestly." Gasps erupted. People were whispering, turning to each other in disbelief. I looked at my father, waiting for him to deny it, to correct the principal. Instead, he stepped forward, his voice rising. "Everything I did was for her," he said loudly, pointing at me. "She was falling apart. She couldn't handle the pressure. I had to take control before she ruined her future." My skin went cold. I stepped back in shock, my voice barely more than a whisper. "You lied to me. You made me believe I was doing everything right." My father's eyes were hard. "I protected you. You were weak. I did what any good parent would do." He turned to the audience as if expecting applause for his confession, but the room stayed silent. The truth settled across the auditorium like a weight. Everything my father had done, every forged document, every lie, it was never about saving me. It was about controlling me. I stepped toward the microphone, my hands still shaking, but my voice steady. "You didn't protect me," I said. "You trapped me in an illusion, so I would never know who I really am. I would rather fail honestly than succeed under a lie." The room filled with a powerful silence. I could see tears in my mother's eyes as she stood slowly, no longer hiding behind him. She walked past my father and came to stand beside me on the stage. Before anyone could react, the auditorium doors opened and 2 officers entered. They approached my father, who backed away in shock. "This is a mistake," he shouted. "You can't arrest me in front of my daughter." The principal stepped aside as the officers stated his charges: fraud, falsifying educational records, obstruction of state procedures. The room erupted with commotion. Some people were shocked. Others whispered that they had always suspected something was off about him. As my father was handcuffed, he looked at me with a strange expression, not regret, but anger. "You think you're free now?" he said sharply. "You have no idea what I saved you from." The officers pulled him away as he kept shouting my name. My knees nearly weakened beneath me. My life, as I knew it, had just been torn apart in front of everyone I'd ever known. But in that exact moment, as I stood there with my blank diploma and the eyes of the world on me, I felt something unexpected. Relief, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't living under someone else's lies. I was finally free to live my own truth, no matter how difficult the road ahead would be. The moment my father disappeared through the auditorium doors in handcuffs, everything around me felt distant and muted, like the world had been plunged underwater. Students whispered behind their hands. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with disbelief. Parents clutched their children's shoulders as if the truth might spread like a chill through the air. The principal gently guided me away from the microphone and back to my seat. I held the blank diploma in my hands, the white page staring back at me like a mirror to my own identity, empty, waiting to be rewritten by truth rather than lies. My mother reached for my hand. It was the first time in years that I felt her touch not as a formality, but as comfort. She didn't say a word, but her tear-filled eyes said everything she had been too afraid to speak. For years, she had been silent, trapped in the image my father forced us to present to the world. Now, the image was shattered, and in that breaking, something inside both of us finally woke up. The ceremony moved forward, but no one was paying attention to the speeches or the music anymore. The atmosphere was no longer a celebration, it was a reckoning. When the principal called me to the stage again to deliver my valedictorian speech, I felt every pair of eyes on me. My knees trembled slightly, but I stepped forward anyway. This time, not to pretend. This time, to be real. I took a breath and spoke from the heart. Today was supposed to be a moment where I stood before you as proof that hard work pays off. Instead, I stand before you as proof that the truth matters more than any achievement. I was raised to believe that perfection is the only path to success. But I have learned today that hiding our flaws only keeps us trapped. I don't want perfection. I want honesty, even when it hurts. The room was silent, not with judgment, but with understanding. Some parents nodded. A few students wiped away tears. When I stepped down from the stage, something unexpected happened. Instead of avoiding me, people approached me. A teacher I once feared hugged me and whispered, "You're brave." A classmate told me she had been hiding her own battle with panic attacks all year. Another quietly admitted her parents had been forcing her to pursue a major she didn't want. In that moment, I realized something powerful. The truth doesn't push people away. It pulls the right ones closer. Later that evening, I sat in my bedroom, still in my gown. The sun was setting, casting warm light across my walls. The house felt different, quieter, lighter, as if it had been holding its breath for years and could finally exhale. My mother knocked softly and came in. She sat beside me and handed me an envelope. "This arrived 2 weeks ago," she said quietly. "Your father hid it." I opened it with trembling hands. It was a letter from the state university I had applied to, an acceptance, not one granted by scholarship or favor, but one earned from the essays and test scores I had submitted before my father interfered. The financial aid package was smaller than what I had been promised, but it was real. For the first time in my life, my future wasn't being handed to me as a script written by someone else. It was in my own hands. The next few days were filled with news coverage, legal procedures, and complicated emotions. But underneath all of it was a growing strength inside me. Yes, I had lost the title of valedictorian. Yes, my family's reputation was gone. But what I gained was something far greater, the chance to live a life of my own choosing. My mother apologized for her silence and promised to start over with me, not as someone controlled, but as someone healing. Zoe stayed by my side, reminding me every day that I wasn't alone. A week later, Dr. Lawson called me back to the school. He handed me a folder, this time with a document inside. It wasn't a diploma, but an agreement. I would be allowed to complete my missing coursework over the summer and earn my diploma honestly. "This isn't a setback," he told me. "This is your second beginning." His words stayed with me. Standing outside the school that day, I looked up at the sky and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because things were perfect, but because they were finally real. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. It would require work, resilience, and courage. But it would be my journey, and that, I realized, was the true meaning of success. Not the version my father tried to force on me, but the one I was finally ready to define for myself. If you believe in choosing truth over illusion and strength over fear, make sure you subscribe to this channel and comment below where you're watching from. Your story matters too, and this is a safe place to tell it.